Consider This, with host Carol Schrader, is supported in part by Better Business Equipment and by Nebraskans for Public Television. Consider This, a news and information program recorded on the campus of the University of Nebraska at Omaha. From the Fireside Lounge in the Milo Bale Student Center, here is your host, Carol Schrader.
Hello and welcome back to UNO and Consider This. You may not have marked it on your calendar, but this is International Education Week, November 13th through the 17th. And it's something new. It's co-sponsored by the U.S. Department of Education and the U.S. Department of State. And it is meant to emphasize the importance of our people going abroad, people from other countries coming here, the whole mixing of cultures and the learning. We're going to talk about that today. UNO has a very interesting program that's over about 20 years old now. And my guest today, Stephen Hoiberg, is with the University of Nebraska at Omaha International Studies and Programs. And I thank you for joining us.
Yeah, thank you for having me.
This is kind of a big whoop on the at the top end of the scale. The Secretary of Education, the Secretary of State have really pushed this week. And the reason is we're kind of we think we're the center of the universe, right?
Yeah.
Basically in this country.
It's a good way of putting it. The term we like to use is ethnocentrism, and if there is a advanced case of ethnocentrism in the world, we're sitting in the very middle of it right now. And a week like this, figures regarding international education have kind of ebbed and flowed over the years. And it's nice that the president has finally put his stamp on a proclamation which makes this something to be embraced by the entire nation.
Well, it's funny, this very day I was listening to a radio broadcast from the National Press Club, and it was the Secretary of Education, Riley, and he told a joke, and I think he was trying to make a point, and you'll get it here in a minute. He says, what do you call people that speak 2 languages? Bilingual. What do you call people that speak 3 languages? Trilingual. What do you call people who speak maybe more than 3 languages? Well, multilingual. What do you call people that speak 1 language? Americans. And it's true, we go over to other countries and we are just totally inept at displaying any of their sort of cultural knowledge.
Well, it's one thing that's always kind of interested me about Americans is that, ethnocentrism here exists to such a degree that when we go other places, we expect that people will speak our language. We expect that people will conform to our ways, as opposed to the rest of the world's view that when we go to America, we have to act like them. The statement, when in Rome, do as the Romans do, really rings true with me. And it's nice that the federal government is finally calling attention to this, and hopefully, this is only the first year for International Education Week, but hopefully it's something that really takes root and lets Americans know the importance of learning another language and lets them know the importance of what it means to act in a way that is respectable abroad, and not to make the assumption that everyone will know about us because we are leaders in business, leaders in industry, something that's unfair. And beyond that, learning about other cultures, learning languages is fun and it's enriching. And above being culturally sensitive, I think those are 2 things which should motivate us as Americans to pursue international education.
The International Studies and Programs is doing some really neat things for this, but just some quick stats, and I won't hold you to the person. If you come to UNO, one thing that you'll notice is that we have a pretty diverse culture here, thanks in no small part to some work that International Studies and Programs has done over the years, a lot of work, Tom Gutierrez and company. And also just as an urban campus, maybe it was easier for us to bring people from other countries because many of them come from urban areas. But what are the stats in terms of foreign students?
It's interesting that you should mention that because we were just having a lunch today with Mayor Hal Daub, in which Tom quoted the official statistic, over 750 students from 83 different countries. and by the year end, it will be over 800, having participated either long-term or in short-term programs. And of course, we're constantly trying to diversify 22 sibling institutions all over the world. So that is one thing that attracts people to Omaha, because they see us as having, or they see UNO as having a strong international commitment.
And then our whole sort of information technology arm is going to start a web program with China. So I mean,
Yeah.
that's a whole different area, but it does show that we are conducive to reaching out, and it really changes the feel for the campus. In fact, it makes me feel like I really need to do a little homework in my life.
Yeah. Well, Hal Dobbs said something interesting. He was sitting at the lunch with a couple of our visiting scholars, one from Germany and one from the Ukraine. And the Ukrainian woman said that when she opened the world map, when she realized she was coming to Omaha to find out where Omaha was, it was in the crack where the two pages were stapled together, so you couldn't really see it. But as Hal Dobbs said, why shouldn't Omaha be an international city? It's in the middle. It's a home to 5 Fortune 500 companies. He also mentioned that every Fortune 200 company has a major operation here. However, in recruiting students, a lot of times those things, those advantages, are not the things that they're interested in. And so we have to really put in a lot of effort to make sure that students do realize that Omaha is a good place for them to come and to learn, and that the University of Nebraska is a place that welcomes them. And as a result of our efforts, and the result is all the programs, the grant programs, and our regular programs, we have a flourishing international alumni.
Very interesting. The residence halls here, the new residence halls on the campus, which are now 2 years, well, a year and a half old, the older ones, has that had an impact at all? And do many of the foreign students live there, and does it create a sense of community? Or do they live out in the community more often than not?
I can't remember what the official statistic of places that we have at University Village is, or even if we do have a guaranteed number of places. However, that's been something that we have been interested in pursuing, because we do realize its potential in attracting students. A number of our students who are involved in degree programs live there, and we would also like there to be students in our short-term intensive language programs to live there. But in terms of unifying the campus, I think that the dormitories have done an excellent job. And as the campus is internationalized, we too would like to see University Village be internationalized, because we do think that it adds to a sense of community, not only for our students, but for the domestic students at UNO as well.
Absolutely. Well, I will talk more about the program, but I do want to talk about some of the special things you're doing. And I think the most interesting one is something that you really grabbed hold on, and that is, I guess for lack of a better word, your rice book. You call it Rice Stories.
Right.
And I always remember when I was a little kid learning to rhyme. It was rice is nice. And we in this country don't know how nice rice is, do we?
How nice it is, or how prevalent in the world is. Yeah, I was watching a cooking show the other day, and they were making a rice dish, and the woman who was cooking said, "In this dish we have to put rice because Americans can't fathom the idea of eating a plain bowl of rice. You know, there has to be ingredients." And in coming up with the idea for this book, I thought also it's the topic of rice is something that needs to be given an angle. It needs to be given some flavoring for Americans to be accepting of it.
Well, let's talk about, you became sort of cognizant of this because of the number of students who come from I guess you would call it, from a food point of view, a rice culture. That it is a staple, and I can't say that word strong enough.
Yeah.
It may be their entire diet in some areas. I mean, they might have other things, but it's like if they can get them.
A staple for no less than 2/3 of the world's population, and grown on every continent extensively with the exception of Antarctica. And it is. I mean, and when something is that important in the world, that it permeates their language, it permeates their folklore, it permeates their day-to-day operations, then it is something, obviously, that demands attention. And not only does it demand attention from them, but it demands attention from the entire world, because if it is serving as a staple for 2/3 of the world's population, then obviously it has some virtues that the rest of us need to realize.
So you came up with this idea, and you put this together in this booklet called Rice Stories. And you talk to your international students, the students that come here, and then other students will benefit from this, correct?
I think so.
I mean, in other words, it's going to go to a whole different group of students, coming
Right.
from one group of students to a different group. You want to explain that?
Right. Well, one thing that we always say in international studies and programs to our students is that one of your duties while you're here is to be an ambassador and to teach us about your countries. And so the target audience for this is school children in Omaha Public Schools. And
What about grade 3 to 6?
Fourth to sixth graders, yeah. You know, they're getting into a stage where they're developing significant interests, and we really think that it's a good opportunity for them to develop interests in international themes. And so these stories were collected to teach the children in 4th through 6th grade in all of the Omaha Public School elementary schools about the importance of rice and how pervasive it is and the many areas of life into which it reaches within the societies where the stories come from.
The neat thing is that for, and you mentioned several countries, and the obvious ones, China, Japan, I think Burma.
Yeah.
Is it Burma now?
Right. Yeah.
I'm
Myanmar.
not up on
Yeah.
Myanmar.
Right.
Yeah, I'm not up on my current geography, but and then even Denmark, which is not a staple, but there was a rice story. But it's a lot of them are folk stories
Yeah.
that have been passed down, and I'm sure as the students told you, their parents told them, and their parents' parents, and these are real significant stories in their culture.
Yeah, extremely. And the thing that I really find interesting about folk tales is that here you have something in these different societies that was so important that the people, they found a need to put an explanation to why it had been given to them or why they had inherited it from the earth. And I think that's extremely interesting that in, as we said, 2/3 of the world, people have found this grain to be so important that they did just that. You know, parts of their history revolve around its development. There's something in there from Bali in Indonesia about the way the organizational system for growing rice is connected to a whole spate of cultural events and to basically the entire way that they go about living their daily lives.
I love the dog story.
Yeah.
I mean, it was one of the ones that was more just fanciful about the dog had walked through a field and gathered. Explain that in 25 words or less.
It's a story of early China and how there were floods throughout the entire country, and the people retreated to the highlands to live. And when the water finally evaporated and they were able to return home, they found the fields barren and for a while subsisted on hunting, but also found that the food that animals ate had also died in the floods. And as they were standing in a field one day kind of discussing their future,
plight.
their plight, so to speak, a dog came running through. And on the dog's tail, there were long bunches of seeds. And I guess in China, there are 5 grains which are considered sacred. And they have a saying that the things that are the most valuable in life are not jade and pearls, but the 5 grains. And the first of these is rice. And actually, the reason that folk tale exists is because the Chinese people believe, and I don't know how strongly they believe it or if it is just part of the folk culture, but they believe that rice is not a gift from God, as do many other cultures, but a gift of animals to people.
Well, that just that's a whole different aspect of their culture.
Right.
But I remembered reading this, all those Native American stories in the Americas, since corn played a huge part from the Central Plains down through Mexico and into South America, what we now call South America, that it had its own set of folklore. It was a gift from someone,
Right.
generally a higher power, or however they made up their mythology.
And it's the same sort of thing, although it's concerning a different grain. You know,
Right.
they found the need to try to put explanation to why this existed and to why they were so fortunate as to have it. And the interesting thing you mentioned is the similarity, is that you do find a lot of similarities between folk tales from one culture to another. And I found that also in the folk tales that I've read, whether they're from the southern part of America or from Scandinavia or from Asia or from Europe. there are a lot of similarities in the, not so much the subject matter, but in the virtues they teach.
But the whole rice thing, I mean, to us, rice has been kind of an oddity. When I was a kid, you know, we had Uncle Ben's rice, or then Minute Rice. Now that was a big innovation for a mom that worked, you know. And then rice pudding. I always loved rice pudding, but it was always just something different to have, to mix it up a little bit with the food. But we forget, and there are different kinds of rice, and different cultures, you know, prize different kinds of rice over others. But we really don't understand that it's not just nice, like meat and potatoes. It's nice to have potatoes. It's almost like the potatoes were to Ireland. They were such a huge part that when they do have a problem, it affects the whole world. So you're talking here in more fanciful terms, but in today's day and age, when rice, that staple food, is not plentiful in a country or whatever, it affects life, death, balance of trade, politics, survival. I mean, we just don't realize that rice can just do this.
Yeah. Well, a book like this and a project like this is nothing more than an interest generator. And there's a lot of information out there on rice, obviously, and on international cooking and whatnot. I'd lived in Japan for a couple of years, and when I was teaching my students, I would ask them, you know, when I was just beginning, what is a concept in English that you know? And one of the concepts at the time that they were very familiar with was California rice, because at the time they had experienced a severe rice shortage and were having to import rice. And at the time, I didn't know the difference. You know,
what's the difference?
Yeah, but a huge difference, because a lot of them were complaining that they were having to eat Thai rice. And all I knew is at the grocery store in Japan, I was paying about $14 less per bag for a bag of Thai rice than I would have been paying for a bag of Japanese rice. But it's not of the same consistency, it's of a different grain size, it's used for different purposes. And you're right, there is a tremendous amount of difference in the various types of rice around the world. And I claim to have the largest collection of rice in Omaha at my home right now. I have over 7 kinds of rice. And whenever people from America come over, they always ask me, what's the difference? You know, why would you need a different kind of rice to make Japanese food as you would to make Indian food? And it's interesting for me, because then you get to explain to them why things are different, and you know, what the differences are and how those contribute to the national diet of various countries.
You mentioned to me before the show that your father had gone to Iowa State to teach agriculture. So, I mean, I don't think people are aware of the attempts made by agricultural researchers in this country and other industrialized countries to help out these countries to find more durable forms that taste just as good to them, that are pest resistant. I mean, one of the things we do to help out is in the field of agriculture, literally the field of agriculture.
Right. Yeah.
So it's just a very complex. It's a world issue.
Yeah, it is, and it's one thing that people here may not particularly realize, but a majority of the international students who come to the United States to study do so to study either engineering or agriculture. And what we're doing in our agricultural colleges throughout the United States is we're teaching them about things such as sustainable agriculture, which is, globally speaking, a fairly obscure concept. And my brother's father-in-law is a seed pathologist and travels all over the world speaking on seed diseases and on the treatment of such things, and also on effective methods of planting. So there's a great deal of involvement, and especially when you think that these people who are coming for advanced degrees in agriculture return to their countries with the expectation that some of this knowledge, at least, will be put towards the cultivation of rice.
You know, speaking of rice, there, just up from where we are in the Student Center, there's a little cafeteria, and there's a little area. I mean, they do like Italian food and you know, Mexican food, and then there's one that's you know, rice and stir fry and things. And I always notice that many of the Asian students eat there.
Yeah.
And not in the sense it's a stereotype, but I mean, I suppose as they look at all that, the rows of food, that's not exactly as they eat at home, but it's the closest thing.
Well, the rice place is something that I had always thought would be an excellent idea. And
I think that's what they call it.
Yeah,
upstairs,
the rice place. Yeah, and I think it's 2 years old now, But what you'll notice on a lot of campuses around the country is that there are absences of places like this where there are high numbers of international students. And as a result, you have them coming to your office complaining of the weight they've been gaining throughout the course of a semester. I knew of people at Iowa State University who would subsist on nothing save for food from vending machines.
That's we never think of that, that our body shape, our whole physiology that evolved has a lot to do with the food that we've eaten. Now, Americans still haven't figured that out because we've changed ours so much. Maybe that's why we're in such a mess. But by and large, health-wise and obesity. But we don't think of that in planning, I suppose. Oh, well, it's great we have international students here.
Yeah, it's a neat concept for a university to have a place like that caters not only by the main ingredients, but also then that it offers several different kinds of rice. Realizing that there are differences amongst the world's population in terms of the rice they prefer, and it's nice for them to be able to come here and adopt many American ways, education, cultural, but be able to maintain their own gastronomic ways, because in reality, American food doesn't have much to offer. What we term as American food, which most people think of American food as fast food and pizza and things like that. And of course, American food has a very interesting history of its own, but it's something that's largely been forgotten through the intervention of technology and putting that together with the food production industry. A lot of the things that are interesting about our nation's history and its food have fallen by the wayside.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
I want to mention one of the other projects. Oh, by the way, you got a small grant to put this Rice Stories together, and so you're kind of limited in your funding, but I'm sure there's going to be requests for copies. Are you going to at least try to, even if it's at a small price down the road, try to make this available? I mean, I'm sure you're up in the air on that now.
Yeah, well, I mean,
but I know we'll get questions. So.
Yeah, if people want it, and there have been such expressions in just in the past week, we definitely want to make it available to people because it's an educational tool, and to deny people something that's educational in its scope is wrong, in my opinion. So we'll do whatever we can to make it available to people, and they can certainly call our office and request it, and we'll do whatever it takes to make sure they get a copy.
There's another neat thing that you've sort of kicked off this week or announced publicly, and that's a partnership between the International Studies and its students and a school in Omaha.
It's Crestridge Elementary School, and actually our association with Crestridge came as a result of this book. One thing that we were thinking of doing, or one thing that we are doing rather, is we're having students from our office go out and present this book to various schools within the Omaha Public School District. And Paul Carter, who works in community school relations, had an idea that I and that other people from our office should meet with the principal of Crestridge Elementary, because within OPS there are several magnet schools, and that they are supposed to attract people for certain reasons. And Crestridge is the international magnet school. And it's a very exciting thing to have happen, to have our office have an association with Crestridge, because one thing that we think is important is that interest in international matters should be something that children are exposed to, at least at an early age. And Crestridge has a very innovative curriculum right now in which they are studying different countries at various grade levels. They're studying the language of various countries at different grade levels, and they're really exposing their students to international issues. And so for us to be partnered with a school such as that is not only exciting and beneficial for us, but for them as well.
Well, so there's more to come on that. I mean, that's just in its little infancy right now.
But we cemented it this morning. They had an assembly there this morning.
Oh, you got to go.
We got to go, and they were singing and are just very excited generally about the idea of learning about different countries and, approaching things from an international standpoint, such as learning about animals from different countries, languages, foods, beliefs, things like that. I think it's a very neat and a very unique approach to education, especially at the elementary level. And the fact that they're paying attention to language is something that's very exciting.
You international studies, and I mean, I was under the misconception for years that it was a department within the university. It's not. It's because it's a different animal altogether.
Right.
It's international studies and programs, and so its faculty or personnel, if you will, aren't exactly like the English department. You know, they
Right.
teach so many hours and they do this. What do you do in the department, the non-department,
Right,
studies
the
and
office
programs,
is
the
what
office?
Yeah, right, the office. And the reason for that, incidentally, is because we don't offer a degree.
Right.
Our programs are certificate programs. I personally work in a program called International Professional Development. And this is a program which strives to educate international business people in intensive English and also business practice. And there's a great deal of involvement with the local business community through business seminars, through corporate visits, and through internships.
And who are mainly the people that your students, your constituents on campus? Are they short-term, really intensely short-term students, or what?
We have a lot of our students are corporate sponsored, so it has a lot to do with what time frame their company gives them. We've had two groups of Koreans here from Oriental Chemical Industries in Korea that have only given their people 2 months to come here and study and then to go back. And so we've had two groups now within our first 2 8-week sessions. Generally speaking, people are here from between 4 and about 10 months. And that is for 2 sessions or for 4 sessions of our program. We're largely made up of Japanese, Korean. We have a growing number of South Americans. We also have had students from China, a growing number there as well, from the Caucasus, Armenia especially, from certain Baltic countries, specifically Lithuania, and Romania also we've had students, but we've had students from all over. Those are just ones that come to mind. Uzbekistan, Russia, and it's a neat thing in that their companies see the value of international professional training in both English and in becoming acclimated to American ways of doing business.
Well, I sure want to thank you for coming and
Yeah.
sharing these things. We've kind of covered a broad scope of things, but then it's a very broad subject.
Yeah, we could go on forever.
We certainly could. Stephen Hoiberg of UNO International Studies and Programs, and we want to remind you that it's relatively new that you're able to view the editions this year of Consider This on the internet. If you want to find it, you simply go to, it's pretty easy to remember. I'm not asking you to commit it to memory, but it's unotv.unomaha.edu, unotv.unomaha.edu. So come visit us. It may be interesting after the election to go back and listen to some of the debates on term limits and 416. Again, thanks for joining us, Steve. It's
Thanks for
been
having
very
me.
interesting for me, and I hope for you as well. See you next week.
Consider This with host Carol Schrader is supported in part by Better Business Equipment and by Nebraskans for Public Television.